Herb. Herb is a plant. I mean, herbs are good for everything. Herb.
Welcome to Eugene Cannabis TV, episode 713. You got DanK, and we've got the, we couldn't have our guest today. Mike will be back, my friend truck driver Mike, so he'll be coming back here pretty soon. I say pretty soon, not tonight, but probably next show. I want to do a quick statement here I like to read occasionally. Thanks for taking the time to watch Eugene Cannabis TV. It's a labor of love for us to produce this show. It's not only a labor of love for the plant, cannabis, but a labor of love to be able to communicate to others about this incredible plant. And also many thanks to the Community Television 1088 group for providing the means to produce the show. We definitely encourage you to look into joining Community Television 1088. It's a lot of fun, and you get to meet some great people. And it's only $10 a year. They got incredible equipment you can use. You can learn to even produce shows. It's a big opportunity, and you get a lot of bang for your buck at $10 a year. $10 a year. So again, that's Community Television 1088. And get a hold of me if you'd like to join. And so, yes, I'm sorry, announcements. I wanted to put out a quick shout for THC Medical Clinic. That's Paul Stanford up in Portland. One of our most loyal activists and really out for the patients. Paul Stanford grows an outdoor crop every single year, a massive outdoor crop, and then gives it away to patients free, and has done it for many, many years. But anyway, he's got a clinic. It's on 27112 Northeast Sandy up in Portland. And the phone number is 503-235-4606. I'll try to remember to read that at the end of the show again, so we'll get pencil and paper so you can take notes. I forgot to tell you that too. And then the medical giveaway at the Flowr of Lyfe. I'm sad to report that last month they weren't able to do it, and they won't be able to do it they weren't able to do it this month either. So, and now they're saying that it might be a couple more months before they start doing that again. I'm thinking they're probably. I'm assuming it's probably the end of the outdoor harvest when they'll have donations again where they can do that. So I'll let you know when I hear more and let you put the word out. But in the meantime, we really appreciate the Flowr of Lyfe and what they have done for the medical marijuana patients. There's not a lot of commercial entities out there that are doing things for the marijuana patients, which is one of my beefs, and I really appreciate businesses that do help, and especially Flowr of Lyfe. They have really stepped up and done a great thing there. And this was caught my eye. This was a great story. I remember this is, and also the title is Teen Odds of Using Marijuana Dip with Recreational Use Laws. I remember well being an activist and trying to legalize cannabis, marijuana, whatever you want to call it. I remember being at the tables, and I remember reading articles about how our naysayers would say, oh no, when medical gets legal, then there'll be more teens, they have more access to it. We can't do that because we've got to keep it away from the kids. So it's the kids, you know. Well, it turned out, I remember reading the stories, it turns out that teen use dropped when the medical marijuana laws passed. And here we are now, we have the recreational laws, and guess what? It's dipped again. This was dated July 8th, 2019 by Lindsay Tanner of apnews.com. It's out of Chicago. New research suggests legalizing recreational marijuana for U.S. adults in some states may have slightly reduced teens' odds of using pot. One reason may be that it's harder and costlier for teens to buy marijuana from licensed dispensaries than from dealers, said lead author Mark Anderson, a health economist at Montana State University. The researchers analyzed national youth health and behavior surveys from 1993 through 2017 that included questions about marijuana use. Responses from 1.4 million high school students were included. 33 states have passed medical marijuana laws, and 11 have legalized recreational use, generally for 21 years and up, many during the study years. The researchers looked at overall changes nationwide, but not in individual states. There was no change linked with medical marijuana legislation, but odds of teen use declined almost 10% after recreational marijuana laws were enacted. The study was published Monday in JAMA Pediatrics. Previous research has found no effect on teen use from medical marijuana laws and conflicting results from recreational marijuana laws. The new results echo a study showing a decline in teen use after sales of recreational pot began in 2014 in Washington State. The results should help to quell some concerns that use among teens will actually go up. This is an important piece when weighing the costs and benefits of legalization, Anderson said. But Linda Richter, Director of Policy Research and Analysis at the nonprofit Center on Addiction, questioned the new findings. The center is a drug prevention and treatment advocacy group. It sort of defies logic to argue that more liberal recreational marijuana laws somehow help to dissuade young people from using the drug, Richter said. Many studies have found that in the states where use is legal, fewer teens think it is risky or harmful than the national average, she said, and teens in those states will have access to marijuana. There is plenty of research showing that the black market for marijuana is alive and well in states that have legalized recreational use. About 20% of high school students use marijuana, unchanged since 2015 after an earlier decline, according to the 2017 version of the surveys used in the area, in the study. Rates range from 13% of ninth graders to 26% of high schoolers, according to the survey data from the Federal Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Repeated marijuana use during adolescence may lead to long-lasting changes in brain function, authors of the new study wrote, and in the short term, it can cause impaired memory and attention. Problems lasting weeks, frequent use starting in the early teens may lower IQ scores. Some kids may be more vulnerable to pot effects because of genetics or other effects. So, it's interesting. And they talk about the black market being alive and well in states with legalized recreational use. That was my observation in Colorado. When Colorado legalized, they were, of course, the idea for regulation is to eliminate the black market. So, but unfortunately, the government wants to tax it so heavily that they end up costing more in the legal store than it does on the black market, which is the way it is now. So now, but the interesting thing is that they are both flourishing. That's which I kind of struck me as a little humorous, but it's kind of interesting. The sign of the times, And then this is another one too. Hawaii, this is good. Hawaii has decriminalized marijuana. This is dated July 8, 2019 at MSN.com, written by Jermaine Lopez. Hawaii on Tuesday decriminalized marijuana, making it the 26th state to decriminalize or legalize the drug. The new law removes the possibility of jail time as a penalty for up to 3 grams of marijuana, but maintains a $130 fine. Hawaii's Democrat-controlled legislature approved the bill and sent it to Democratic Governor David Ng in May. Ng didn't sign it, but also didn't veto it, effectively letting it become law on Tuesday. The new law will take effect on January 11th, 2020. Unfortunately, 3 grams would be the smallest amount of any state that has decriminalized or legalized simple possession of marijuana, the Marijuana Policy Project, an advocacy group, noted in a statement. Still, removing criminal penalties and possible jail time for possession of a small amount of cannabis is an improvement. Amen to that. This is different from marijuana legalization. Under decriminalization, possession of small amounts of pot no longer carries jail or prison time, but can carry a fine and possession for larger amounts. Repeat offenses in sales or trafficking can still result in harsher sentences. Under legalization, penalties for marijuana possession are completely removed, and sales are typically allowed. Some opponents of legalization favor decriminalization as a step toward peeling back America's harsh drug and criminal justice policies. They see tough on crime policies as too punitive and costly, but they don't want to resort to full legalization, which they fear would make pot too accessible to the U.S. and allow big corporations to sell and market the drug irresponsibly. The concern for legalization advocates is that decriminalization keeps the ban on selling marijuana, which means users don't have a legal source for the drug, and criminal organizations could therefore still have a source of revenue that they can use for violent operations around the world. The fines, while less punitive than arrests or prison time, can also cause problems, since they're often applied to a racially disappropriate manner. 11 states and Washington, D.C. have legalized marijuana, although D.C. and Vermont don't allow sales. 15 additional states, now including Hawaii, have only decriminalized. So far, marijuana legalization has failed to gain serious traction in Hawaii's legislature. Supporters of legalization argue that it eliminates the harms of marijuana prohibition, the hundreds of thousands of arrests around the U.S., the racial disparities behind these arrests, and the billions of dollars that flow from the black market for illicit marijuana to drug cartels that then use the money for violent operations around the world. All of this, legalization, advocates say, will outweigh any of the potential downsides, such as increased cannabis use that might come with legalization. Opponents, meanwhile, claim that legalization will enable a huge marijuana industry that will market the drug irresponsibly. They point to America's experiences with alcohol and tobacco industries in particular, which have built their financial empires in large part on some of the heaviest consumers of their products. This could result in far more people using pot, even if it leads to negative health consequences. Hawaii doesn't seem to be ready for legalization, but it has now embraced decriminalization. So, and that did it through the legislature. See, Hawaii was the first state to legalize medical marijuana through the legislature, and I would remember that very well. And for them to be the first state to decriminalize is good news. Let's hope that they'll do it through the legalize through the legislature. But the way things are going, it can happen. Things are changing. You know, the times they are changing, as they say. Also, and back to Paul Stanford, I wanted to mention too that he is still have his GoFundMe account and needing help. He's fighting off a Canadian company that stole his business from him. So that's a whole story. You check out Paul Stanford, and then Paul Stanford and the medical clinic. Check it out on Google. It's quite a story, and he's really gotten messed over and screwed up because of it. But real hero though. So anyway, that's the first half of the show. So stick around for the second half, and sure get your papers and stuff, because you might hear some more stuff you want to hear. Write down the dates of things that are coming up, announcements. Always good to have paper and pencil. And we're also looking for guests. Consider that. I'd love to have you come on the show and be a guest. You come and stop in and visit if you like, but better yet, be on the show. I'll be right back for a second. Welcome to the second half of episode 713 of the Eugene Cannabis TV show. You got DanK, your host, and covering some news stories considering cannabis. This caught my eye. Now this was a little bit dated. This was 5 years ago, but it still needs to be talked about. Worldwide campaign, cannabis for therapeutic purposes is a human right. This was written by, it was on the medicalcannabis.com website. Again, January 10th, 2014. This is from the organization Patients Out of Time. Excellent organization. It's an international consortium of medical cannabis organizations. It's demanding that humans, regardless of state or allegiance and without qualifications, be able to use cannabis therapeutically. In a joint declaration, the organizations from Europe and North America refer to Article 3 of the Declaration of Human Rights, adopted by the United Nations in 1948. The declaration is the beginning of a worldwide campaign on the use of cannabis for therapeutic purposes. The declaration was published in 6 languages on a dedicated website, www.medical-cannabis-declaration.org. There's where you need your pencil and paper. That's www.medical-cannabis-declaration.org. And it states, every medical doctor has the right to treat his or her patients with cannabinoids and cannabis products according to the rules of good medical care. And every patient has a right to access cannabis and cannabinoids for medical treatment supervised by a medical doctor, regardless of social status, standard of living, or financial means. The declaration is based on overwhelming scientific evidence. It takes a strong stance against the prejudices and untruthfulnesses of lawmakers, other political players, and experts with limited medical knowledge on the issue, says Franco Grotenherman, MD, Executive Director of the International Association for Cannabinoid Medicines in Germany. It is the aim of the declaration to generate worldwide support and allow organizations around the globe to adopt a more definitive position. The joint declaration and related website from the nucleus of a worldwide movement regarding the human right to use cannabis for therapeutic purposes, adds Al Byrne of Patients Out of Time. The declaration is the product of knowledgeable experts from multiple countries who are working to change anti-cannabis forces. Cannabis has established medical use throughout the world's history, and coupled with the recent discovery of the role of the indigenous cannabinoid system in the human body, must be made available to all citizens of all countries. The creators of the declaration designed it to encourage and allow both organizations and individuals to join them by signing the document in support of the common goal to create a worldwide campaign to end the wrongful prohibition of therapeutic cannabis. Many scientists, doctors, and other experts in the field already offered their support by adding their signatures. The initial signatories of the declaration are listed below. Please join us in demanding an end to medical cannabis prohibition and the inclusion of therapeutic cannabis in the national pharmacopoeia of every country on Earth. And it lists all the organizations. I won't read all of them, but American Cannabis Nurses Association, Americans for Safe Access, excellent organization there, and a bunch of international organizations. So anyway, that's definitely, I think, something most of us could get behind, and we hope that continues. And cannabis is becoming more and more acceptable all the time, so it sounds like it's a go. So we'll see how it goes. This is Congressman withdrawals veterans marijuana measure amid VA opposition. This is by Kyle Jagger, and it was the marijuanamoment.net, dated June 21st, 2019. Representative Earl Blumenauer, Democrat, Oregon, withdrew an amendment on Friday that would have allowed U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs doctors to recommend medical marijuana to patients in states where it's legal. The congressman, whose separate measure blocking the Justice Department from intervening in state legal cannabis activities, passed on the House floor on Thursday, told Marijuana Movement in a phone interview that the VA blindsided lawmakers by arguing for the first time that their physicians would have been professionally liable if they issued medical cannabis recommendations. This is a new wrinkle from the VA, he said. If we'd known, I'm absolutely convinced we could have passed the measure. I have been working in this Congress to extend medical cannabis access to our veterans who, if anything, need medical marijuana more than any other category of our citizens. Blumenauer said in a speech on the House floor just before pulling the amendment, "We lost 7,000 people to the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, but we've lost 100,000 of those veterans to suicides and opioid overdoses. The VA, I'm afraid, has not been as helpful as it should be." He cited high rates of opioid prescriptions and overdose deaths among veterans as one reason he's repeatedly advanced this amendment. In 2016, versions of the measure cleared both the House and the Senate, but the language stripped out by the Republican leadership, he said. An illustration of how far we have evolved, the House leadership that stripped this provision out was headed by Speaker John Blumenauer, who is now a spokesperson for the cannabis industry, having described what he's involved on this issue and thinks it's a good idea, Blumenauer said. "We haven't evolved in this Congress in providing protections for the VA. And this time around, the VA itself stood against the measure. Even though this amendment has passed repeatedly, all of a sudden the VA has decided, well, we would be putting their doctors at risk," he said. "Never came up before. If we'd known about it, we could work around it. I think we should work to fix this." The specific concern apparently is that VA doctors could potentially be prosecuted for aiding and abetting violations of the Controlled Substances Act by filling out forms on federal property to help veterans obtain cannabis, which is still a Schedule I drug. Blumenauer had filed a separate amendment on the issue blocking the Justice Department from punishing VA physicians for that activity, but also withdrew that measure earlier in the week prior to Rules Committee consideration because it would have been ruled not in order. There are limitations in terms of the Rules Committee pushing things that are actually stretching what we do under the rules of the House, Blumenauer told Marijuana Movement in an earlier interview. The congressman also cited some procedural roadblocks, among others, thrown up by some members of the Appropriations Committee. "We worked very hard to see if we could resolve them in the time that we had, but unfortunately, we couldn't." Advocates have pointed out that federal courts have already determined that doctors who simply recommend medical cannabis to their patients are protected under the First Amendment. But VA's concern caused uncertainty among lawmakers as to whether that protection extends to federally employed physicians, and those questions could have jeopardized the amendment's passage on the floor. After the momentum of this week between House hearings on cannabis and small business access to capital, a House Veterans Affairs Committee hearing on medical cannabis research, and a historic victory in the House with Blumenauer's CJS amendment, it is incredibly frustrating to see the congressman withdraw an amendment that could provide medical cannabis access to veterans. David Mangon, Director of Department of Government Affairs at Americans for Safe Access, told Marijuana Movement. The VA's last-minute sabotage of this amendment creates an unforeseen hurdle that could have easily been avoided, he said. Instead of coming up with watered-down excuses, the VA should be working with Congress to create a functioning framework to get medical cannabis to our veterans. It's not just Blumenauer's measure that the VA is resisting. A department representative testified in opposition to 4 pieces of legislation focused on cannabis and veterans that were discussed during a congressional committee hearing on Thursday, including Blumenauer's standalone bill to accomplish the same objective as this appropriations amendment. The official told the panel that VA is also against legislation that would require the department to conduct clinical trials on the therapeutic benefits of cannabis for conditions such as post-traumatic stress disorder and chronic pain. a bill to mandate a survey of veterans on their cannabis use and proposal to require training on medical cannabis for VA health practitioners. All that said, it's possible that if the congressman would have moved ahead with his amendment and the VA had effectively made its case to defend the measure, that could have jeopardized his related bill, which would not permanently codify the policy as opposed to being attached to an annual funding bill. Excuse me. Yeah, permanently excuse me. Official told the official told the panel the PA is also against legalization that requires the department. No, he did that. All that said, it's possible that this congressman would have moved ahead with his amendment. The VA effectively made its case to defeat the measure. They could have jeopardized his related, which I read. I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself here. Anyway, so we'll have to see how that all turns out. But my friend Mike was telling me last time he was here that his experiences with the VA have been actually fairly good, and his doctor now is actually talking to him about marijuana and saying, yes, I think that's a good way for you to, anyway, he's speaking positively about marijuana. So things are not as bad as they have been. I'm sure that they've got to get it more, get it down as a procedure and things before it happens all over. But things are improving, so that's the good news. And like I say, Mike will be back, and I'm sure we'll be talking more about that in the future. So again, like I said, oh yes, I wanted to read this again real quick on the THC clinic out of Portland. That's at 2712 Northeast Sandy in Portland, and the phone number is 503-235-4604. And they can definitely help you get your medical card, not your medical card, but get the paperwork for your card. I'm trying to say doctor recommendations. If you don't have a doctor, will sign the papers. And the medical giveaway, the Flowr of Lyfe, has been postponed for another couple of months. So I'm afraid that's the bad news, but we appreciate what they've been able to do in the past, and they will do in the future. So.